There you go.
Hello, my name is Mercedes and I'm a PhD student at the Bioresource Engineering Department and the McGill School of Environment. And today I will be talking about ecosystem biomimetics. First, I will define very briefly what is biomimetics, then I will talk about ecosystem biomimetics and also about the lack of methodology in this area. And finally, I will introduce or present a qualitative tool based on the energy system diagrams from ecological engineering. So, biomimetics is defined as biologically inspired design or also as the transfer of knowledge from nature towards the engineering fields. And this is one famous example. First we had the birds, the observation of the bird's flight, and then people like Leonardo da Vinci started to draw these sketches to understand how this was possible. And later on, people like the Wright brothers were able to build airplanes. But how do architects mimic and what do we mimic? Some researchers have done a classification regarding the element of nature that we are taking as a source of inspiration. So if we are mimicking one organism, then we are at the organismal level. If we are mimicking one behavior, we are at the behavioral level. But if we are mimicking not one, but multiple organisms and processes and functions, then we are talking about ecosystems, biomimetics, or ecomimetics. And this research is focused on this level of biomimetics. But why are ecosystems interesting? Well, it happens that there are some ecosystem principles that have a great potential for optimizing the performance of the building, the environmental performance of buildings. And like, for example, ecosystems are primarily driven by solar energy. Ecosystems dynamics are thermodynamically efficient. Ecosystems are complex systems, and ecosystem populations can evolve and adapt. So how do we do this? How do we transfer knowledge from ecosystem towards architecture? Well, this is an issue that most researchers are dealing with because there is not a systematic method to do biomimetics in architecture. But most researchers agree that there are two main approaches, the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach. In the top-down approach, there is an architect or a designer that defines a problem and then he goes to nature to look for a solution. In the bottom-up approach is an ecologist or a biologist who finds one interesting pattern in nature and tries to find the applications in human technology. Regarding the tools, there are several tools identified. The two first, Biotree and the database Max Planck, they rely heavily on powerful databases. The third one, the lexical research, proposes the use of keywords to relate biological tests with design problems. None of this is specifically focused on ecosystems, biomimetics. And today, what I'm presenting you is a tool, a qualitative tool, that is able to represent buildings and represent the environmental performance of buildings, and also that can become a platform for sharing knowledge between ecosystems and architecture. So next I will explain what are the energy system diagrams. Then I will show some examples of application of these diagrams in buildings, and then we'll go with some results. So the energy system diagrams are a language used by ecological engineering to visualize the flows of energy and the organization of the systems. And they were first introduced by Howard Adam. And these diagrams consist mainly in three things: the boundary, the stocks, and the flows. The boundary can be defined depending on the problem, the system that we are studying, the size of the system. And the stocks are the steady variables of the system. And Adam defined different types of stocks. For example, he defined the sources that are the external sources of energy to the system. He defined the producer, that these units collect and transform low energy quality. When we talk about energy quality, we are referring about the solar energy that is needed to produce 1 calorie of another type of energy. We also have the consumer units that transform energy quality, store it, and feed it back. And we also have the interaction units that receive inflows and transform it into a proportional outflow. We have the storage that store energy within the system. And regarding the flows, we have the inflows and outflows going from one unit to the other. We also have the heat sinks that represent the energy that is dispersed into heat. We also have the control flows that represent the information feedback flows in the system, and the recycle flows that represents the energy that is reused within the system. So most of the systems can be represented using these diagrams, and so the buildings, and that is where I did next. And so we pick 29 different buildings from 3 different rating systems: LEED, the Living Building Challenge, and Passive House. And first, we draw the boundary. In this case, 2 boundaries for all the buildings. The interior boundary represents the envelope of the building, and the external represents the building side boundary. Then we draw all the sources affecting the buildings and their static. Then we draw all the components of the buildings, and finally we introduce all the possible flows. This is a superposition of all the 29 buildings, and now we will see each one of these diagrams. And as you can see, the gray lines are the inflows and outflows or end of energy. The red lights are the heat sinks. The green ones are the feedback of information. The blue ones are the recycle pathways. And this brown orange is the outflows. And we will see with a little bit more of detail 2 of these buildings, 2 of these diagrams. For example, this one is the Great River Energy Building, and if we follow one flow, the sunlight flow, we see that a certain amount of energy is rejected, and another amount goes to the lighting system when it is used as daylight, and another amount goes to the photovoltaic panels. There, this energy is transformed into electrical energy, and it goes to the electrical system, and from the electrical system it can go, for example, to the heating system where it's transformed into heat, and this is used by the people working in this building, and these people will produce some services that will go to the external system. If we take another example, the Chartwell School, and in this case we follow the water flow, we see that the rain gets into the system and it goes to the garden or to the green roof. Some amount of water in the green roof is filtered and goes to a water storage, and the water in the water storage can go again or to the garden or can go to the hydraulic system to be used in the toilets. In the hydraulic system is also receiving water from the municipal water system, and it's providing water to the users, but at the same time is sending the wastewater to the water treatment plant, and this water, once cleaned, is going to be used to water a play field that will be used by the users, who will be producing some services for the external system. So what we are seeing here is that buildings can be represented using energy system diagrams, and that they also can represent the environmental performance of these buildings. What we did next was to compare some parameters that we use to measure the environmental performance of buildings, to compare them with parameters from these energy system diagrams. So we built several awful tables like this, and the parameters we compare were, from the architectural side, we took annual energy use intensity, the percentage of energy produced on site, the annual water consumption, the rating systems and their certification level, and the building's type and site. On the side of the energy system diagrams, what we considered was the type, number, and location of units, the type and number of inflows and outflows, the connectivity of the units, the recycle flows, the control flows, and the energy energy quality ratio. So because these buildings are all sustainable certified buildings, we expected that some behaviors will be similar. But we also found some differences that are interesting, and I will show you very briefly both of them. So one thing we found is that all those buildings with a higher energy quality ratio, this means a higher number of transformation of energy within the system, they tended to have a lower consumption of energy, and also they tended also to have a higher production of energy on site. Also, we found that those buildings with a higher score in the LEED rating system tended to have a higher number of renewable inflows, a higher number of renewable resources, and a higher number of components. And regarding the similarities, we found that most of the buildings under study, they have a similar connectivity pattern in the user unit. And it was that there was a higher number of inflows comparing with a lower number of outflows. And this can mean that buildings are very focused on the users. And the opposite happened with the electricity unit, with the electrical system unit. When we had a higher number of outflows compared with a low number of inflows. And this also can be related to the fact that buildings relay a lot of electrical energy. So for today, I want to conclude that the energy system diagrams are able to represent buildings and are able to represent the environmental performance of buildings, and also that system diagrams put buildings in the context of complex systems, and is also a tool that can be shared with ecological engineering, and this means that we can develop a platform for transferring knowledge from ecosystems towards architecture. And finally, this is only one first step. The next step is to develop a quantitative tool to measure these applications. So thank you very much for your patience, and that's all.